Well, Papist readers, now you are a Papist viewer. This is a brief video speaking about spiritual direction. My name is Father Paul Hazing. I'm the Director of Vocations for the Archdiocese of Omaha. And spiritual direction is a topic that comes up for many young adults because young adults are wondering very often what they are called to. And so I thought I might touch on 3 points about spiritual direction. The first one, who should seek spiritual direction? Why one should be seeking spiritual direction? And finally, who should be giving spiritual direction? So first, who should seek spiritual direction? Spiritual direction is a gift of the Church to anyone who is praying. And so who should seek spiritual direction is anyone who's praying. A praying person should not go in alone and should be accompanied by another. And so a person seeking spiritual direction will find very quickly that they are given a companionship. Now this companionship can be done in several models. There can be the sort of mentoring model, an older companion. There can be a sort of disciplinary model where you're given regimen of exercises, if you will. But the model I'm most familiar with, and the model that is widely practiced throughout the Archdiocese of Omaha because of the Institute of Priestly Formation, is the contemplative model. And that is, the director is listening with the directee to what God is doing for them. And so the whole focus of direction is upon the relationship between the directee and God. And for this reason, everything in direction is confidential. And direction is completely sought after by the person seeking spiritual direction. A director should never be looking after in some way over the shoulder of the other and trying to make them come to direction. There should be sovereign freedom. So the confidentiality and the sovereign freedom of spiritual direction is absolutely critical for any fruitfulness to take place, because it's God's labor. God is always laboring to love us. Which leads to why someone would seek spiritual direction. There are 4 basic reasons why someone should be seeking spiritual direction. The first one is they want to learn how to pray and pray well. They want to gain some virtue in that prayer. And so that would also be accompanied by a desire to perhaps be seen through some trauma or darkness that someone might be going through. And the other 2 reasons are a little less transitory and a little more permanent. That is, a person is involved in active ministry in the church. If they're actively working in the church as, say, a missionary or a parish assistant, in some way working directly in ministry in the church, they should have a spiritual director. And finally, someone who is actively discerning their vocation, which isn't a process or a project, but a listening. And that listening needs to be more acute at certain times in a person's life. And so those are 4 basic reasons to be seeking spiritual direction. Desire to grow in prayer, a desire to be seen through some darkness, a desire to be working fruitfully in the ministry, and finally, discerning one's vocation. Who should be giving spiritual direction? Very often it's a priest who is a master of prayer, but there are many consecrated and lay people who have the gift of spiritual direction. They're gifted with the capacity to listen with God to what is happening in the heart of another person. And so there are many places where spiritual directors can be trained. Very often a spiritual director will have a background in retreat work, giving retreats, especially an 8-day retreat or weekend retreats that last over the course of several days. And so they should have that in their repertoire. A person giving spiritual direction should be praying and should have their own spiritual director. If they do not have their own spiritual director, run. They should also be able to respond to the question, give me a concrete experience of God's grace in your life. If the spiritual director can't respond to that with coherence, run. If you run into a spiritual director who is simply saying, just try harder, run. Because it's God's work. It's not your work. Your growth in holiness is not your business. It's God's business. And a spiritual director will listen with you to what God is doing and hold you there to receive what God wants to do. Those are some tips on spiritual direction. Hope you enjoyed them, all you members of the Papists and all you listeners and readers out there. Until next time.